biggest injury what-ifs, NBA 2000s. Injuries are no question the worst part of athletics. No fan wants to hear about or see them, and no player wants to experience them, as their body is the tool in which they use to pay the bills and build a personal legacy. With that said, they happen, and they happen often enough that it changes not just the trajectory of the player's career, but the entire generation and the history of the game. What I mean is, instead of in 50 years, stories are written of a guy that came in as the #1 overall pick, drafted to his hometown team he's been dreaming of playing for, he's as advertised in his first year and wins the Rookie of the Year, even more than advertised in year 2 when he becomes an all-star, then unbelievable status in year 3 where he actually wins the NBA Most Valuable Player award at just 23 years old, becoming the league's youngest MVP. From there, imagine where that story goes had it not been for injury. Derrick Rose was never the same after the ones he suffered when he was a transcendent talent, never before seen the things he could do and never seen exactly the same again, the humble beast. Or the stories of an absolute beast in the post as an amateur, in the era of back-to-the-basket traditional centers still being cool. Actually, arguably the last of the dying breed of traditional centers, and one could make a case that his injury is what caused the NBA to change at the position in the first place. When Greg Oden was drafted before Kevin Durant, he was seen as the next in line center headed toward greatness, and he had the demeanor to be that, as in he didn't shy away from ferociously finishing at the rim, and with a little development he could have amounted to expectations. But the world will never know if he could have carried tradition into the new era or not. His former teammate can relate as well. Brandon Roy was an all-star for the final time in 2010, and to me was one of the biggest what-if stories of his generation. When you say Kobe and Dwayne Wade, many forget a guy right on their heels in Brandon Roy. He was actually a respectable low-budget version of them both in that his mentality was of Mamba essence as he competed with the same determination and wanted to be the best, and his moves reminded me of the slow, methodical approach of D-Wade. Yes, they call him Flash, but Wade took his time to pump fake his defender to death or slow Euro-stepped his way in the lane for finishes, and Roy was the same. All mid-range monsters. He was in the perfect era to succeed those guys into greatness, but injury once again didn't allow that to happen. In this video, I'd like to celebrate those players while also talking about their injury impact on the future and where their careers headed versus trajectory prior to those unfortunate injuries. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Derrick Rose, drafted #1 overall 2008, prime 2009 to 2012. Derrick Rose was first injured April 28, 2012 in the first game of the first round of the 2012 NBA playoffs. It's the worst injury I'd seen up to that point, not in a visual sense, but because it made no sense for it to have happened to Derrick Rose, and I think almost everyone had the same reaction when they learned the totality of what had happened. Why the f was he still in the game? First off, the Bulls were leading the Sixers by 12 points with 1 minute and 22 seconds left to play in the game. A minute and 22 seconds left, where at any point during Rose bringing the ball up, Coach Tom Thibodeau could have called a timeout and taken Derrick Rose out the game, and all his starters for that matter. As the ball comes up, he's not even sending a player to the scorer's table to check in the game for Rose, who had played 37 minutes up to that point, making you believe what Reggie Miller, the announcer for that game, said about Coach Tom Thibodeau wanting to send a message and a knockout punch to the Sixers that they're looking to sweep them. As we'd learned, that's not how series should work, and certainly not at the hands of your star player. Playoff series should be looked at as short marathons, and once you have a team beat, preventative measures should be in place to ensure your players' body are ready for the next day, seeing as you all use those bodies to profit, literally. There is no need for knockout messages in Game 1. We beat you, and that's all that will matter. Derrick Rose was on his way to being a top 5 to 10 point guard of all time had he stayed healthy, and there's no reason to question it. He was in the first crop of big point guards in the NBA who were also super athletic like we've never seen in speed, quickness, and jumping, who also were great distributors as well. Russell Westbrook, same draft class, is a top 75 player of all time and still playing relatively high basketball to this day. To think Derrick Rose was better than him. On every level he topped Westbrook, and in the NBA head-to-head he continued to dominate. Rose was also humble and a great representative of the NBA and basketball in general. Unlike others, he didn't need to showboat after simple plays and too little this, rock the baby that. He just wowed you, beat his opponents, and went home. Ja Morant is a good example of the second coming of the Rose-style point guard, but Rose was the non-baggage Morant that actually accomplished things before he celebrated them. His trajectory was insane at just 23 when he got injured, and he never bounced back the same. The year he was cleared to play, he injured his knee once again, and Chicago gave up on him because of it. Changed basketball viewing for me, as Derrick Rose is my third favorite player of all time, behind MJ and Allen Iverson, and changed legacy for one of the most deserving players ever. Not to mention, the Bulls were never the same since. Greg Oden, drafted number 1 overall 2006, no real prime. Greg Oden came into the NBA an injured prospect, missing his entire true rookie season after having microfracture surgery, aka the career killer, aka should still be called experimental, aka how has nothing been created as a better option since, aka I'm not a medical professional.
But I play one on TV.
Greg Oden sadly was a hobbled bird since day one, and an interesting case of what if, because I truly believe he could have been a transcendent center that may have kept the traditional center name alive had it not been for injuries. One of my favorite positions historically to watch, not so much now, was the center position. Those guys had the least amount of space to work in, and their bodies are tested each time down the floor on both ends, and they're expected to do most of the heavy lifting of getting anyone that hastily calls them up to free themselves for opportunities, and a lot of times won't even be rewarded for it. But the art of having a soft touch while also being powerful is fascinating, and Greg Oden was on his way to showing why he had all the tools to be the next great big. Even more unfortunate was his inability to heal fast enough due to his fast metabolism that caused him to gain weight while injured, causing more injuries like to his foot in his NBA debut, playing just 13 minutes and not scoring a point. On January 19, 2009, Oden had a career-high 24 points while also grabbing 15 rebounds, showing his potential dominance in one of the last times we'd see it. He'd chip his kneecap months later, missing 3 weeks. He played 61 games his first year and averaged 8 points and 7 rebounds in 21 minutes, playing on hobbled lower extremities. In December year 2, he injured his left knee once again, taken off the court in connecting stretchers, having surgery to repair a fractured patella, missing the entire season after 21 games, and averaging 11 points and 8 rebounds in 23 minutes. He missed the next 3 seasons before being waived by the Blazers and signing a 1-year deal with the Heat. He played 23 games before his career was officially over at 26 years old. This was huge for the traditional center and was the last we'd see of its kind ever since. Brandon Roy, drafted number 3, 2006, prime 2007 to 2010. Brandon Roy was first severely injured April 11, 2010 in a game against Kobe Bryant and the Lakers after 11 minutes and 19 seconds. MRIs came back reporting he had a bone contusion and later revealing a small meniscus tear. He was expected to only miss the first round of the playoffs, although in hindsight he should have missed the rest of the season and playoffs altogether. He came back 8 days after surgery, which was in hindsight a major mistake as he was hobbled through the next season 2010-11 before being shut down in December, missing 9 games. He'd have microfracture surgery February 2011 on both his knees, returning maybe too soon again a little over a month later to play 47 games that season, averaging a career-low 12 points a game and career-low 28 minutes a game. He was never the same since, as he abruptly announced after the 2011 lockout he was retiring from basketball because his knees had degenerated to the point he couldn't perform to his capabilities. He was amnestied by the team and missed the 11-12 season. He attempted a comeback with the Minnesota Timberwolves 2012-13, but it only lasted 5 games after platelet plasma surgery before he was injured again in the preseason, needing career-ending surgery on his right knee before it was all over. Roy was supposed to be one of the next big stars to open the 2010s generation and was the right guy for the job. He wasn't as prolific a scorer as Damian Lillard, mainly because he slowed the game down to find the right spots, leaving him with far less opportunities than a fast-paced, quick-shooting Dame. But he had the same killer instinct and it factor to be a superstar. He was already a 3-time All-Star by 23, making his first in year 2, just like Derrick Rose, along with the same Rookie of the Year award. He was in fact the first Derrick Rose, losing his Hall of Fame path to injuries. Another humble beast and great ambassador gone from the game too soon. All in all, the NBA is the highest level of the greatest sport, but far too often we see some of the greats taken away because of injuries, and history misses what could have been. These 3 were headed to great accomplishments almost certainly before they became the biggest what-ifs of the 2000s. Salute, much respect to these guys. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.